Okay, so here we go. This is your vertex, and therefore that's the equation for vertex form, but then it's so easy to forget when the parabola is upside down like it is, that it needs to have a negative in front. I forget that all the time. This one, if I go over here and down here, I have proven that this does not have a stretch. The over one and down one spot, or over one and up one spot, is really critical to check. So there's no stretch, so there's no other number out here. Okay, then last but not least, I actually stick in x is 9. So if I put in a 9, I'll have y equals negative. 9 minus 1 is 8, and 8 squared is 64, and then plus 4. And then it's negative 64 plus 4, so y must be negative 60. Now for those that by accident forgot the negative, then you should have thought that you stick in the 9 and you get 64 plus 4 is 68. If they said 68, give them half credit, because all they forgot was the negative. If they said negative 60, they were right on. What does that mean again? They told you x is 9. That means I'd have to keep going, like, here's x is 2, here's x is 3, here's x is 4. X is 9 is like way over this way. So of course it's way down low because the graph is kind of going down really steep. So it makes sense that it should be a big negative number. All right, that was number 1. Now, did anybody write the equation this way? See this negative 1? See this 3? I go y plus, nope, sorry, y equals x plus 1 and x minus 3. Did any of you do it that way? That's a good way to do it too. But you also have to remember that it's upside down and therefore what? A negative. So easy to forget that. Okay, let's move on to this next one. A graph has an x-intercept at negative 4, 0 and 2, 0. That's basically doing the same thing as last time, except it doesn't tell you the vertex. You have to figure it out and then make it in vertex form. And the nice part is it says right here, there's no stretches or shrinks or reflections. So you know it looks something like this. Y equals something squared, and it's got to be an x here. And then I just got to figure out what to put here and here. So do you get, I really only need the vertex? All right, so how do I find the vertex? Well, I make a little picture. And it says there's no flips or stretches or whatever, so I know if it goes through negative 4 and positive 2, do you get the parabola has to be going this way? And this is the same thing we did yesterday. Remember how we find where that middle spot is? What's exactly between negative 4 and 2? It's 3 spots over from each edge. 1, 2, 3. That's 1, 2, 3 spots over from the edge. So there we go. The x must be at negative 1. That's the axis of symmetry. That line that runs down the middle. And do you remember how to get the other part of the vertex? Because this is the x of the vertex, it's negative 1. What's the y of the vertex? Take the negative 1, you stick it in the equation, which is where? I don't have an equation. Well, where am I supposed to stick it? I have to write an equation, I guess. So I write y equals parentheses, and again, this is going through negative 4, so it's x plus 4. And the other one, for the other side here, is x minus 2. And now, we'll make sure there's no negatives. Yeah, and there's no stretches. Okay, good. Now I can stick that negative 1 into that equation. Negative 1 goes in here, negative 1 goes in here. Y equals negative 1 plus 4 is 3, and negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. I don't know if you noticed, they're always opposites like that. So the final answer is negative 9. So the vertex is at negative 1, negative 9. If they have the vertex, give them half credit, because that's hard to find all by itself. But they asked for the equation in vertex form. So now I go y equals parentheses x plus 1 squared minus 9. That's the equation in vertex form. For full credit, they have to have that. All right, and the third one. Given the graph below, find f of x equals 14. Okay, so here we go. F of x is 14. That means y equals 14. But I need an equation to stick this into, right? So let's write an equation for it. Y equals blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to stick in the f of x is y, right? So they're saying y is 14. So I'm going to put a 14 right there when I'm done writing my equation. All right, so let's write the equation. Y equals, well, if I knew the vertex, oh, I do know the vertex. It's negative 2, negative 2. So I'm just going to write this in vertex form. Something squared, and then put the vertex there and there. So I put plus 2 and minus 2, and I make sure there's no stretches. Over 1, up 1 has a spot there, yay, and it's right side up, so there's no negatives and no stretches. So there's my equation. Can I just be done? No. Now what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to stick in f of x is 14. So where does that go? In for the x? No, the y. The y is 14. And now I add 2 to both sides. 16 equals x plus 2 squared. Then I square root both sides. And I get 4 equals x plus 2, but that's the absolute value of x plus 2. Do you remember when you do square root of a variable, you have to do absolute value? And then you split this into two things. X plus 2 is 4, and x plus 2 is negative 4. And then I solve. Subtract 2 from both sides. X equals 4 minus 2 is 2. And subtract 2 both sides. X equals negative 6. Negative 2, negative 6. And what did I just find here? I found my answers that are the possible answers for f of x equals 14. Do you get f of x is the y? So we know y is 14. Like if I could draw the line, it'd be like a line like this, except way higher. It'd be a line at 14. And then it wants to know what were the x's. One of them was where it touches over here, and that was our answer that was positive here, positive 2. And the other one is way over here, they would touch again, and that answer is over here at negative 6. Okay, that was a tough one. There's 2 answers for that last one. And you have to do square roots, absolute values, like everything I've taught you. This is why this top 20 stuff is so important. Like right here, a lot of you, before I did the top 20, wouldn't have known how to solve this. And you wouldn't have known there was absolute values there. Some of you still haven't learned that. That means you're going to lose points on this next test because I told you it was important to learn it. Now you're going to see why. Because problems like this, you'll need an absolute value. You'll need to know how that splits into 2 equations. You can't just slap a plus minus on it. I think some of you still think that. Let me do one more that's like that. I know you're at somebody else's desk right now, but they won't mind if you write on their iPad. Try this one. Solve that. Make it split into 2 equations, like I just showed you. Okay, x plus 3 equals 7. Exactly the way you see it, without the absolute values. And then you copy the exact same thing. X plus 3 equals 7 again. But then that would be crazy to do the same exact thing twice, so you just make one little tweak. What? Make it negative. But 7 has to be made negative. Now I subtract 3 from both sides. Final answers. X equals negative 10. And x equals, wait, I did it wrong. This side is not negative 10. It's just 7 minus 3, which is x equals 4. That side's negative 10. 4 and negative 10 are your 2 answers. How many of you got that one right? Okay, good. All right, that's how we got 2 answers on that other one, because we ended up with an absolute value in it. All right, that was a tough one. So there were 3 questions, 3 points. Anybody that gets 3 out of 3, you're in great shape for this upcoming test. And there's going to be people that only get like 0 out of 3. And you're obviously needing to study more than the average bear for this coming test. Okay, get back to your spot and see how you did. All right, so here's your part 2 try at this. Here's a graph. Here's where it's touching. It's touching at negative 3. No, that's positive 3. Sorry. Positive 3 and positive 11. Let me think if that works nice to find the middle of it. 9, 8. Yep, that works nice. And I'd like to know where the vertex is on this puppy. Assume there's no stretches, and obviously there's no flips because it's right side up. And then write the equation for me in Vertex form. And then write the equation for me with these two numbers in factored form. So now, that other score doesn't count, but this one does. Answer these two questions. Should be able to write it for me. Actually, there's three questions there. One is, what's the vertex? I actually wouldn't start with that. I'd start with this one, this yellow or this green one. Write me the equation that must be if you have roots of 3 and 11. I'll pause while you do that. Okay, let's see how many of you would get a 3 this time. How many of you are done? Raise your hand if you're done. That's almost everybody, so I need to move. So your equation should have been x minus 3 and x minus 11, because these are the roots, and when you stick them in, they make those little numbers on there are the zeros also. They should make the equation 0. Do you get that that is the right equation for the green part? Raise your hand if you had that part right. Good. Then the next thing is the vertex. You remember us making that little dotted line yesterday? Why was that important? Because it tells us that our vertex has to be there, and which part do we know then? It is not 7. It's something comma something, okay? Which part do we know? X. The x. And it's got to be exactly between this and this, right? How far is it between 3 and 11? All right. Just to clarify, what I'm asking is not where is this point. What I'm asking right now is how far over do we go? This way. 4 spots over. Okay, so it is 7, comma. Now how about the y of it? Well, how do you get the y of it? Where does this 7 go? Into the equation. 7 goes here, 7 goes there. 7 minus 3 is 4, 7 minus 1 is 6. 4 times 6. Sorry. 7 minus 3 is 4. 7 minus 1. Wait a minute. 7 minus 11. Okay. There we go. It's always opposites, right? So I should have known that. 4 and negative 4. And so then you multiply them and you get negative 16. 7 comma negative 16. How many of you guys had that one right? Okay, good. And then the last thing is vertex form. Once you have the vertex, that's a snap. X, and then that 7 becomes minus 7. And the negative 16 becomes negative 16. It stays the same. You trust the stuff on the outside. All right, so there's a summary of those 3 that kind of bombed before. How many of you got 3 out of 3 this time? Okay, good. That shows you're capable of learning. That's a good thing. Okay, so what is the new stuff for today? I'll pause for a second while we pull that up again. All right, so we have done zero product property. We did factored to general. Now we got factoring day 1, day 2, and day 3 coming up. There's 3 days of factoring to get really good at factoring. Today's is going to be a walk in the park. We have done so much factoring at the top 20 that you're going to feel really good about this part, I believe. So I am going to ask that you go directly to the homework in this case, because we have done so much factoring. I'm going to just start the homework right away with you. And given how much time we have, or in this case don't have, I'm not going to have you do all of them. We're going to skip a few. Okay, so we're going to do 1 and 2, and then we're going to skip a few. Okay, so number 1, it says rewrite this into general or standard form. Generally, you just have to do what? Multiply it out. It is factored. Number 1, we want to multiply it out. To get general form, you generally just multiply. So you just FOIL in that thing out. That should be easy peasy. Okay, do that on this one and this one, and be careful. Easy to mess up the middle terms. But what we're really here to do is factor, and that's where problem 3, 4, 5, etc. start. I'm just going to have you skip a few. Why don't you skip number 4 and number 6 and number 8. We'll skip some of these easy ones, and then we'll get you right to the ones that are going to be more challenging, because you're already pretty good at basic factoring. All right, so let's do number 3 together. Right away, you know that you set up 2 sets of parentheses. And then you know, I hope by now, that the numbers at the end, after the x's, have to multiply to 8 and add to 6. So, what's 2 things that multiply to 8 and add to 6? Plus 4 and plus 2, and then when you multiply this out, why would you multiply it out now? To check yourself. One of the best things about the factoring test is you know if you found them or not. But kids that don't take the time to check them will make little mistakes, like to put a minus somewhere they didn't mean to. When you multiply it out, you know for sure. My firsts are x squared. My outside is 4x. My inside's 2x. And my last is 4 times 2 is 8. And I put it all together, x squared plus 6x plus 8. And that's what I started with, so yay! I know I did it right. So please, take the extra time. It doesn't take very long. Just do a quick FOIL it out, and you'll know for sure if you did it right. Okay, number 7 gets to be a little more challenging because it's got bigger numbers. Whenever there's bigger numbers like that, like on number 7, everybody please look at number 7 with me. Who remembers how you start that then? Take a 2 out. That is called the GCF, by the way. The greatest common factor is 2. You take the 2 out, and then you see what you have left. Once the 2 comes out, you have x squared minus 4x minus 12. And then you can factor it again. Don't forget the 2 is still there. A lot of people just drop the 2. Is 2 still there? Who's got it? X and X and what? Yes, sir. Minus 6 and plus 2 is correct. Now, how could I be sure? Because I quickly in my head figured out the outside and the inside, made sure that negative 6x and positive 2x came out to negative 4x. It's always about that middle term. If you can make that middle term come out right from the FOIL, then you know you did it right. Yes?
Did you leave the 2 on the outside, or do you have to put it in?
It's a good question. You should leave it right there. If you multiply it back in, then you're unfactoring it. Factoring means you want it to be factored apart as far as possible. All right. So, I'm hoping today's feels nice and simple. The ones we did at the beginning of the hour are obviously tougher. Trying to get you ready for this tougher test that's coming up. This factoring test that we have, I think you're going to like, as long as you've been good at the top 20. And if you haven't been, this is your last chance to learn it here, because we will need factoring for the whole rest of the year. And this is kind of the 3 days of intensive factoring. Okay, that's all I have for you for today.